So I'm aiming for a full Nintendo 64 collection, and in this video I'm going to go over what I have so far. So hi guys, this is Graeme here for the review time. Like I said in the intro there, I am now aiming for a full Nintendo 64 collection, and I figured I may as well start with the two big ones in my collection. So this is Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time. These are arguably two of the best games released for the system, and personally speaking, they're two of my favourite games released for the N64. Majora's Mask is absolutely fantastic. I would deem this my favourite game of all time. Just everything about it, the story. I know it's the same graphics and sprites used from Ocarina of Time, but there's just the mystique and everything behind it. It's just absolutely fascinating. And the first Zelda game released for the N64 was of course Ocarina of Time. This is an absolute classic game. What can I say about this? This kind of set the benchmark for 3D gaming in my opinion. Everything about this game, the colours, the animation, the sprites, the dungeon crawling, the combat, just you name it, this kind of set the standard for 3D games going forward. So next up is Super Mario 64. So this was the first game I got for the Nintendo 64, and this is still the original copy that I had from when I first bought it. I got this copy with the console. It was bundled in together. At the time it was either this or GoldenEye, and I opted for this, and I'm so glad I did. Not that there's anything wrong with GoldenEye, I just feel like I got my money's worth more with this than I would have with GoldenEye. This was the first fully 3D rendered Mario game ever released. The camera I found at first a bit finicky. Getting used to 3D Mario was a bit weird at the time, but when you get used to handling the stick, you know, everything kind of just starts falling into place, and this game is still fantastic to this day. Another couple of games I have here: TNT Snowboarding, Blast Corps, and Killer Instinct Gold. And here we have another two big titles for the N64. These are two rare games, BanjoKazooie and BanjoTooie. So Rare at the time used to develop games for the N64, and in my opinion they released some of the best games for the console. They also released GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, and Conker's Bad Fur Day, and I'm sure more than that. And the gameplay for these games seemed to just completely utilise the 3D controls, took full advantage of the 3D stick, and everything was just amazing to control. Everything was just smooth and fantastic. Graphically as well, everything was just so bright and colourful, and this just made these games just so fun to play. As a kid, all these bright colours and all these animals were just amazing. Now, Body Harvest. Possibly the hardest game, not only released on the N64, but probably the hardest game I've played of all time. And yes, that's including Dark Souls and Bloodborne and everything like that. This game is fantastic. This was the kind of precursor to Grand Theft Auto 3. As you can tell, it's kind of similar to how Grand Theft Auto 3 looks and plays, and the team that did make this ended up moving on and forming part of Rockstar, if I remember correctly. But this game was as hard as balls, to be honest. It just had a brutal save feature. I didn't think it even had a save feature. You just had to kind of go start to finish, and that was it. But this game is definitely a must for the N64. And now here are two games that in my opinion get an awful lot of flack. This is Castlevania and Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. Understand why they're so heavily disliked. These were the first 3D Castlevania games, and everybody says a real Castlevania game is a 2D Castlevania game. I disagree. I think this game although it has its flaws, is really good. Camera is a pain in the ass, the controls can be a pain in the ass, but once you kind of get used to it, it all makes sense. The storyline as well I found very good. This would have been my first exposure to the Castlevania series, so this does hold a kind of special place for me. And again, I never had any kind of comparisons, so when I first got this, I was right into it. Legacy of Darkness was the kind of follow-on there. It kind of takes place 8 years before the first, and for some reason the camera is worse in this game. The camera is an absolute pain in the ass. But that being said, I still think this is great fun. You played as Cornell when you first started, and then once you completed his campaign, you unlocked a second character where you had to save 7 kids in 7 days, and then if you completed that, you then unlocked Reinhardt and Carrie's characters in story mode as well. So the fact that was, 4 games effectively in one was just mind blowing to me, and I couldn't tell you how many times I went through each one start to finish. But this game does get a lot of shit. I think it's undeserving of how much shit it gets, but again, that's just me. And as soon as I first heard that, I was in love with this game. So this here is F0X and Mario Kart 64. In my opinion, two of the best racing games for the N64. Everything about F0X is just amazing. The track design, the fact it's just high octane speed all over the place, and the soundtrack is just heavy metal. This would have been what got me into heavy metal back in the day. Just that opening guitar lick, it had me absolutely hooked. Even to this day, I still put the F0X soundtrack on just to listen to it. The music for every level, every track is fantastic as well. It just matches the game absolutely perfectly. And it's only now I've realised that I've not recorded enough gameplay for F0X. Christ. Well, anyway, here's Mario Kart 64. Another classic Mario game released on the N64. This is just, again, another one of these games that are just absolutely beautifully coloured, fantastically animated, and the controls for this are just buttery smooth. I wish I knew how to drift back then as well as I do now, because I'd be fucking kicking ass. Another 3 games here are Wave Race, Penny Racers, and Scars. But that's part 1, guys. Thanks a million for watching. Part 2 will be released next week, and hopefully see you then. Thanks again, guys.